Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I am your host, Tom Grossi, and today what we're taking a look at as we are in draft week. We did it. We made it. This is the 6th week in a row in which I've produced at least 5 videos. I'm going insane. But before we do that, today's video is going to take a look at the best defensive prospects for the Green Bay Packers, going all the way from our first pick at number 12 down to the 4th round. And then tomorrow we'll be taking a look at the offensive picks. And then on Wednesday, mock draft. Thursday, the sleepers of the draft. And of course, the live stream of the draft. So we have a jam-packed week. Keep it here. Now, before we get to that, I want to do a big shout out and thank you to the new Patreons. Thank you. Over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. If you would like to check that out for some cool rewards and to support me, it would be greatly appreciated. Head over to patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. Now, let's get down to business. I know I've made some Mulan puns in the past, but I feel like I need to move on to a different Disney movie. And so I'm about to show you a whole new world, baby. And that whole new world begins at number 12. Now, remember, for this specific video, I'm just going to look at what defensive players make sense for the pick. So if don't flip out that I didn't include any offensive guys, because that video's tomorrow. So the first one that I'm taking a look at, obviously, the number 12 spot, there's 4 guys that I think make sense on defense for this pick without it being a complete and total reach. And these are the following. And we've talked about a bunch of these guys on the channel already. The first one is a defensive end / outside linebacker from Mississippi State, and that's Montez Sweat. Now, obviously, Sweat could be gone at this point. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 player. Obviously, he has a little minor heart condition that could have him drop down to 12, and plus, if teams are trading up to get quarterbacks, I would be thrilled with this pick. I think the guy has a great motor. I think he's better than Rashawn Gary, and who's another guy who could be picked here, but I kind of don't want him there. Rashawn Gary getting pushed it to the outside a little bit too much, but Montez Sweat obviously had a fantastic combine, but his tape just looks great. You can also check out the little breakdown I did of him on this channel. We also have Clelin Ferrell, and yes, that is how I say his name because I looked it up a whole bunch of times. The defensive end from Clemson. The guy is a run stopper. The guy is able to get to the quarterback. Had a phenomenal 2018. While I've seen him go, usually around like the 15th spot, even in like around 20, I think that he would be a great matchup for the Packers. And again, the best part about this is that either Montez Sweat or Ferrell, they are able to either one, play outside linebacker, which is a spot of need that could line up opposite Preston Smith, or they can sit down and go for a defensive end, and they can wind up taking Mike Daniels' position if he winds up leaving next year. In addition, we got another outside linebacker, and that's Mr. Brian Burns, who, again, I have also done a breakdown on this channel on Brian Burns. I'm not as high on Brian Burns because in the beginning, he's going to have to be a rotational player. He's not that great in run defense, but he is really, really good at getting to the quarterback, and so he can't really do both right now, and I would see him more as a rotational player, especially within his first year. Not saying that he's bad, but the Florida State prospect, I wouldn't really want to pick him here, but I've seen him mocked at us to 12. And then finally, we have good old Devin Bush, the inside linebacker from Michigan. While undersized, the guy is a tackling machine, has great speed, is able to go from sideline to sideline. And each one of these guys, whether it's Devin Bush or it's Montez Sweat or what have you, are able to fill a need for the Packers, right? Either as a pass rusher or inside linebacker. But I think when it comes to this number 12 spot, and we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, it makes sense that we pick up another edge rusher, even though we got the Smiths, because we could shore up another side. And in addition, we could also fill a gap with inside linebacker. But again, like for offense, I would think that the only 2 options you have here are offensive line or tight end, and only tight end would be TJ Hawkinson, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Then at number 30, we got some options here. This is where our options open up a little bit. So if we want to go safety, we have Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State. In 2018, had 99 tackles, 2 interceptions, 5 passes deflected, 3 sacks, and 9 of those tackles were for a loss. So he is kind of up there as the best safety prospect. Obviously, we're going to have some options in the second round, which we will talk about. But if we wanted to go for Jonathan Abram, if he was available, he would be an option. In addition, sticking with safety, we have Darnell Savage from Maryland. In 2018, he had 52 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 2 passes defended. Known as, like, again, one of the top 3 safeties within this draft class. Obviously, safety is a little bit of a weaker position, not only for the Packers, but also within the 2019 NFL draft. But I could potentially see us getting Savage here. If I had to go with a safety in particular, I'd go with Adderley, but I think he'll be around in the second round. And then finally, if we wanted to shore up that secondary a little bit more and not go safety, we could go with Byron Murphy, who's the cornerback out of Washington, who had 58 tackles, 4 interceptions, 13 passes defended in 2018, is clearly the best cornerback within the NFL draft. I know I did a video on Greedy Williams. I think that Byron Murphy is overall a better player, even though Greedy Williams is getting a little bit more press. But we could either address cornerback, and I know we spent our first 2 picks on them last year with Josh Jackson and, of course, Jair Alexander in the first, but we don't know what's going on with Josh Jackson. Who knows if he's going to move over to safety, and we could potentially get Murphy here to fill a need. Then we got numero 44, and the first thing I said, we mentioned him before, is Nasir Adderley. I did a video on him. I really like him, and the reason I like him, the safety out of Delaware, is because his first 2 years at Delaware, he played as cornerback, and then the last 2 years, he played as safety. So he is that kind of hybrid player. He could fill in wherever we needed him to be. He could line up opposite Amos. He could line up opposite Alexander, and I think he's a hell of an energetic player. He's fast, and he hits like a truck. So I'm all for Nasir Adderley, and if we can get him with the number 44 pick, I think that's tremendous value. In addition, if we wanted to continue with safety, we can go with Juan Thornhill, the safety out of Virginia, who had 98 tackles in 2018, 6 interceptions, and 7 passes defended. And so, again, he's within those like top 5 safeties, and I mean, I would imagine the Packers, in one of these first 3, it makes sense that obviously number 30 or 44, we're going to go after a safety, considering it is a position in need. And this is where, like, if we're going to get the top guys, it's either going to be at number 30 or 44. So I could see us doing it here. But back it up. Let's say we decided to go outside linebacker again. We could go with DeAndre Walker from Georgia, who had 45 tackles, 11 for a loss, 7.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles in 2018. So he's getting a lot of hype, most likely going to be gone by the second day, early in the second round. Or we could go with, for example, the cornerback I just mentioned before at LSU, and that is good old Greedy Williams. I think Greedy Williams, while getting a lot of press, has a lot of work to do. He is an aggressive player, sometimes a little bit too much and gets a little handsy, but I think that if he falls to number 44, there are some mocks saying that he goes in the first round. Some of them were like way too high, in my opinion, but I think this wouldn't necessarily be a terrible place to snag him. But if we wanted to go inside linebacker outside of the Devins from the first round, we go Trey Lamar, the inside linebacker from Clemson. In 2018, had 80 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, 3 sacks, an interception, and 7 passes defended. So Trey Lamar, again, he's a solid player. There is a major drop-off at inside linebacker between Devin Bush and Devin White, who are projected to both go projected within the top 20. And so this, again, would wind up filling a need because we really need to address inside linebacker, considering Jake Ryan wind up going away from us. So I wouldn't doubt getting any one of these folks in the second round. And then we move on to the third round at number 75. So I mentioned him in our mock draft for the Packers 7-round mock draft, and that's Vashawn Joseph, the outside linebacker from Florida. What I like about him is not only is he a tackling machine, had 62 solo tackles in the past 2 years, but he also could make the move to inside linebacker. I really don't like him as outside linebacker, but if he could move into the inside, I think he'd be super duper effective, and I think that he would be a stud for the Green Bay Packers. But if we wanted to go over with cornerback, we could go with good old Julian Love, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, had 63 tackles, 16 passes defended, and an interception in 2018. This guy is a great prospect. Obviously, what I like the most about him is the fact that he is able to block and defend so many of those passes. And we also have a need at cornerback, but maybe we don't want to address that in the first and second round because it's not as necessary. And so we can pick up this guy in the third round. Or we can go with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who has one of the best names, the cornerback slash safety out of Florida. And here's another hybrid guy, but had 66 tackles, 9 for a loss, 3 sacks, 2 passes defended, and 2 interceptions in 2018. I know a lot of you are mentioning him in the comments, and I think that this would be if he's still there at number 3, this is another guy who could fill that need if we did not address cornerback or safety in the first and second round, who could really help out the Packers. And then again, if we wanted to go inside linebacker, we have Jermaine Pratt, the inside linebacker from North Carolina State. In 2018, had 104 tackles, 10.5 for a loss, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 5 passes defended, and he's a 3-down inside linebacker. And so he's obviously not getting the hype as the other Devins. I told you there was that big drop-off, but he is a productive guy, and I think the Packers could use a tackling machine like Pratt. And then finally, a lot of you have been hitting me up about him lately, the outside linebacker slash defensive end from Michigan. That's Chase Winovich. In 2018, 68 tackles, 17 for a loss, 5 sacks. Now, I looked him up, and I wouldn't say he would be a bad pick in the third round here. The concerns about him is that he has a very large personality and that he is very vocal and needs to simmer it down a little bit for the NFL locker rooms. But I see that the Packers usually stray away from those kind of big personalities, so I don't know if they're going to wind up going with him here. But as a player, I mean, he does have the production. And if for some reason we didn't address outside linebacker or pass rusher in the earlier rounds, we could get him here. And then for round 4, considering we already have 2 picks within this round, I kind of just grouped them all together. These are some guys that are on my radar that we can wind up picking. You have Christian Miller, who's the outside linebacker from Alabama, who had 8.5 sacks, 36 tackles, and 11.5 of them for a loss. A productive player and could get a bunch of looks in the 4th round. Then we have Blake Cashman, the inside linebacker from Minnesota. In 2018, had 104 tackles, 15 for a loss, 2.5 sacks, 3 passes defended, and a forced fumble, and ran a 4.5 40-yard dash. And so, again, if we didn't address inside linebacker in any of the earlier rounds, we could take a shot in the 4th round. In addition, we can go with safety with Mike Bell out of Fresno State. In 2018, had 87 tackles, 8 passes defended, and 3 interceptions, which was pretty good production. And then who I mentioned earlier in the 7th-round draft, Isaiah Johnson, the cornerback / could be moved to safety from Houston, 66 tackles, 7 passes defended, and 2 interceptions in 2018. I don't really like him as a cornerback. I think he's a little bit too small for that. I would like him more as a safety, especially with his speed. I don't think he's going to really be able to hang as a cornerback, but if we're able to pick him up as a safety, again, he could fill that hybrid role and also could help out the Packers in a position of need. So those are my names for best defensive picks for the first 4 rounds of the draft. And I'm curious, are there any guys that kind of stick out to you? Do you completely disagree? And of course, we'll talk about offense tomorrow. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TomGrossi Comedy, at Tom Grossi Comedy, on all the social media you see below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and of course here on YouTube 5 days a week. And we're doing more than 5 this week. We're putting out content every day. Thursday, we'll not only have the live stream, we'll also have the 2 videos on the guys that the Packers wind up drafting. Same exact thing for Friday, and we'll have videos. And then on Saturday, we'll have the 6 videos for the 6 picks that the Packers wind up drafting. But thank you so much for watching. You'll see my mental health deteriorate throughout this week, so stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi, and as always, go Pack Go.